So tonight, first of all, it's Hoshana Rabbah. It's the last night of Sukkot. Tomorrow night is Shmini Atzeret. It's the beautiful holiday of Sukkot. Sukkot is basically God's hug. This is God's embrace, God's hug. And we're here. We're here on this joyous occasion, and it's basically exactly a year later. October 7, the exact anniversary is Simchat Torah. So I want to share a few thoughts, exactly 4 thoughts about this 1 year anniversary where we are here, and I hope you'll be able to take away 4 things from tonight's class, which is going to be light on the lighter end because, Torah is Torah, but we can still keep it light. So, the first thing is like this. If we look around, you'll notice how there are so many miracles taking place in the last couple of months. It's like dizzying. Sometimes you have to close your eyes and just think for a second, oh my God, that was another miracle. Just think about what's happening in Israel. The Iranian missiles in April, and now again Rosh Hashanah time. These are missiles that one ballistic missile can cause tens of thousands of deaths. There was a Chabad school where an Iranian missile landed right there. There were kids there a couple of hours before. Could have been hundreds of children dying. President Raisi, the president of Iran, dying in a helicopter crash. Just suddenly. Hania, Yemach Shemoy, being assassinated in Tehran at 2 a.m. Hezbollah pages, we don't need to talk about that. What a daring, incredible Mossad operation happening. The raids on Hezbollah rockets, they just announced now a third of its capabilities have been destroyed already. Israel breached the communication network at Beirut, ordering an Iranian plane with missiles to go back. Hamas was destroyed as an army. Hassan Nasrallah and Sinwar, Yemach Shemam, obliterated. These are miracles upon miracles upon miracles. And the question is, when we think with hindsight, a year earlier, where were these miracles on October 7? Where was the Mossad? Where was the Shin Bet? Where was the Shabak, this mighty army of Israel that is producing stunning miracle after miracle after miracle? Where were they October 7? It's the same army. It's the same soldiers. It's the same people. Where were we exactly a year earlier on Simchat Torah? Where were we? What happened? Now I'm sure you've all thought about this, right? Anybody have a good answer?
Wanted to happen.
They can't be but they can't be the entire answer. We need to explain it as well. But yes, nothing happens without Hashem. There's no question about that. And I want to suggest an answer here, and if you think about it, you'll realize how true it is. There was a story going around on Chabad, WhatsApps, on Twitter, X. There was a guy called Howard Levy in Michigan. And he said, I live in this town 20 minutes from nowhere. Like, it's nowhere land. And a Chabad student or rabbi tracked me down, knocked on my door, offered me a honey cake, told me about Rosh Hashanah. So somebody responded, we have the Mossad and we have Chabad. One finds them and one finds us. But the answer to my question is the following. Listen carefully, we didn't lack the ability on October 7. We lacked clarity and resolve. We had the way, we didn't have the will and the why. That was our problem. We were lacking in our vision. We didn't know why we were there in Israel. We lost our clarity, we lost our purpose. It's the same army, the same Mossad, the same daring capabilities. In fact, the whole pager operation of Hezbollah started way before October 7. It was the same army, the same intelligence, same everything, but we lacked the resolve, we lacked the why. Why are we here? Why are we alive? Why are we living in Israel? We lack that clarity. Israel, our superpower, is not in our capability, it's in our why, it's in our purpose, it's in our vision. As Jews, that is our superpower. There was once a group of Hasidim of the Baal Shem Tov, and they were sitting in his synagogue and they were praying, they were learning, and there was a Ukrainian farmer who came in, knocked on the door. It was a muddy night, cold, wintry night, and his horse was stuck in the snow. And he came and he asked the students, "Can you please help me?" So they didn't really want to go out, they didn't want to disturb their learning. So they said to him, "We can't." And he answered them back in Ukrainian with the following line. He said, "Mojic da nie chochesh." You can, you just don't want to. And the Baal Shem Tov called his students over and he said, "I couldn't have given you a better lesson myself." What his words of this Ukrainian farmer are a lesson in life for all of us. You can, you just don't want to. There's nothing that stands in front of our will. If we truly desire something, nothing can stop us. Nothing. But we have to want it. We have to desire it. If you want to study Torah and mitzvot, if you want to keep kosher, nothing can stop you. If you want to come to a Torah class, nothing can stop you. It's all about your will. It's all about how much do I desire it. Because when you truly want something, ein davar ha'omed bifnei haratzon, nothing stands in the way of your will. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, who became one of the greatest thinkers of this century, he was a student studying in Cambridge University, and he came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe for a private audience. And the Rebbe asked him, it was a long audience, but one of the things the Rebbe asked him is, how many Jewish students are there on campus? And he answered about 1,000. And the Rebbe asked him, how many students are engaged in Judaism? And he answered about 100. So the Rebbe asked him, and what are you doing about the 90% that are not engaged in Judaism? So Jonathan Sacks, then a young student, answered, he said, well, in the situation where I find myself in, and he started to answer, and the Rebbe cut him off. And the Rebbe said, one doesn't find oneself in a situation. You put yourself in the situation, you create your situation. You don't find yourself in a situation, and if you do find yourself, you unfind yourself, you change the situation. But nothing can change you but yourself. Nobody can stand in your way, because if you have a willpower to do something, you can do it. October 7, we failed because collectively we lost our why. There was a guy in America by the name of Paul Gedalin. He was 11 years old and he was orphaned. He grew up in orphanage houses. He had a hard time. At age 17, he found himself a job in a hotel. And he went to one of the hotel guests, he robbed him, and he killed him. So he was sentenced to prison. And he was in prison for decades and decades and decades. From 1911 till 1974, he was in prison. And at the age of 80, he was going to be released. And he had lived so many years in prison that he went in front of the judge and he asked him, he petitioned him to stay in prison. Because he said, when I was in prison in 1911, this was before the World War I, before World War II, there were no cars on the roads. It was a different world. How am I supposed to live in a world which I don't know? So the judge allowed him to stay in prison for another 6 years. He was released at 86 years old. He was the longest serving prisoner in America. And he spent the last 6 years of his life in freedom. How tragic. But what if we are all in that prison? What if we are all living our lives right here, right now in New York City, and we are in this spiritual prison because we haven't broken out of ourselves, because we are in these habits. We are in this spiritual prison, in spiritual shackles. We haven't been able to escape because of the situation we find ourselves in, because we've lost our why. On this Sukkot, on this Simchat Torah, as Jews collectively, we have found our why. We have fought like lions, as I'm going to explain in a second. But we've certainly found our why. But also as individuals, we need to find our why, our purpose, our mission. Why are we alive? Because a car didn't drive us down, or because we are truly alive? There was a journalist, Gershon Jacobson, and because of his press credentials, he was able to go into Russia. And he one time went to Russia and he heard all the tsaras, all the problems facing all the Jews there. Truly big problems. And he came to a private audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Brooklyn, New York. And the Rebbe sat with him for 4 hours, listening, interrogating him, asking him questions about Russia, about Jewish life there. And he didn't mince his words. He told him how difficult it is, and the Rebbe was crying. And after 4 hours, the Rebbe walked out together with Gershon Jacobson. After 4 hours of torture, of crying, and it was dawn just then. The light was starting to shine through, and the Rebbe said to him, another day has arisen. Because as much pain as we've been through, another day has arisen. So as we mark this year Simchat Torah, we've gotten our why back. We know why we are here. We know why we are alive. And this is what I want to get to in part 2 of the Shir. I just want to mention the Shir tonight is donated, dedicated, sponsored by the Flint family, in memory of Esther Bat Shlomo. Thank you, Tzvi. Thank you so much. So part 1 of this class was as a way of introduction. How could Israel have failed so miserably on October 7th? We get to part 2 now. Part 2 is something that every single person in this room has thought about countless times during this past year. And that is the following. 300,000 civilians in Syria were massacred, not a word. Assad gassed 1,000 children, 5 million killed in the Congo, 200,000 in Chechnya, 400,000 in Yemen, 300,000 in Darfur, 600,000 in Ethiopia, and not a word. And the world screams at Israel. Why? Why are we treated unjustly? Why is the whole world's eyes on us? Why is it that we are a country the size of New Jersey and they hate us and they can't stand us? How is it that professors at Harvard are saying statements like, it depends on the context? How could that be? This is America. It's like saying a sign on Auschwitz, Arbeit macht frei. Well, it depends on the context. How is that possible? 1 million Japanese were killed by the Americans. Not a word. 3 million German civilians were killed in World War II. Not a word. And you've all thought about this, right? You've all thought about this. How could it be on the college campuses at Columbia in America? In America, in the USA, they side with Hamas. How could it be? Right? Anybody have a good answer? Yeah. The long answer, right? I'll give you the short answer tonight. The short and brief and only real answer. Because there is only one real answer to this question. Right? Our era is so pro-rights. We're pro the rights of every individual. We're pro everything. We're literally pro everything. But we're not pro-Israel. And we side with Hamas, who torture, rape, murder. It's like insane. It's like the world has gone berserk. It's gone crazy. The world is obsessed with Israel. Why?
They're jealous.
They're jealous. They are jealous. But there's got to be more to it. And the answer is the following. God chose the Jews to represent the world. We are the ambassadors for the truth. God has chosen the Jewish people to serve as his ambassadors, to elevate, to uplift, to strengthen, to nurture, and to transform our planet. And that is why nobody is indifferent to the Jew. It's like this fanatical infatuation with the Jews, because we were chosen to be God's ambassadors of the truth. Ever since God gave us the Torah nearly over 3,000 years ago, we are the ones responsible for the truth, and the non-Jews, the world senses this. We are the ambassadors of the truth. It's us sitting here in this room. You want to know proof that the Torah is divine? This is it. This is the proof. Why else would they be obsessed with us? We're 16 million people. That's nothing. There's 9 million people registered to vote in Pennsylvania. We're nothing. We're nobody. You know, on October 8th, there was a Hamas protest at UNC. Right, this university is college. And this Jewish professor gets up over there and he starts screaming at the Hamas, screamed at them, until the police had to call him off. So he gets into class and he's teaching his class, and the student goes over to him and she says, "Wow, thank you so much for what you just did, standing up against Hamas." So he said to her, "Are you Jewish?" She says, "No." He says, "What do you care?" He says, "Because you guys are the chosen people." So he says to her, "You know, I'm a professor, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in that. There's no chosen, there's no God, there's nothing." So she says to him, "You may not believe it, but we know it." Because when you look at how obsessed the world is about us, about Israel, about Jews, you know that there is a divine truth to the world. You just know it. Never in our history has it been more clear that the Torah is divine than now. It's like, imagine you have a baseball game, right? There's 30,000 spectators watching this beautiful baseball game. And there's 18 players. And the 18 players are oblivious to the shouting and the roaring and the cheering, because they are obsessed with the game. They have to play the game. So imagine the 30,000 spectators are the world, right? China and Russia and America and the whole world are the spectators. And the Jewish people, Israel, the 16 million Jews living on planet Earth, we are those baseball players. And the world is like cheering us on. Every newspaper in the world is literally cheering us on. The world's obsessed with us because we are like some sort of cosmic baseball game happening, because we were chosen as God's ambassadors to the world, to teach the world the divine truth, to teach the world about values, how God exists, what's happening in the world. That's us. You know, Jay Schottenstein, the CEO of American Eagle, so he closed the NASDAQ a couple of weeks ago, right? We all saw it during the month of Elul. And instead of closing the bell, he blew the shofar. And he said the shofar is supposed to awaken us, awaken the world. And he got a resounding applause for that. Bibi Netanyahu spoke in Congress a couple months ago. Democrats, Republicans, everybody was there. And you know when he got the most applause? The most applause across the aisle, across the political parties. When he said they accused the Jews, Israel, being a colonial state. But the truth is that Abraham walked here, and Isaac and Jacob. And God has given us this land, as it says in the Bible, for 4,000 years. And when he spoke that truth, he received a resounding applause, more applause than anything else. Because Americans, because the world respects the truth. They want to hear the truth from us. The truth is, Israel doesn't exist because of a 1947 UN partition. Israel exists because God gave it to us 4,000 years ago. Because God created the world, as we read about in this week's Torah portion, Bereshit, as we read about in the first Rashi in the whole Bible. So part one of this class tonight was telling you how could Israel have failed miserably on October 7th. And part two was explaining why do they hate us. But let's get to part three now. If anybody has any questions, please stop me in the middle. Part three is the following. There's a famous medrash when Iraq invaded Kuwait. The Lubavitcher Rebbe told this medrash in the 1990s, and it's as if it's written for our day and age. And the medrash says like this: Bishana shemelech HaMashiach ba, in the year that the Messiah is coming, there will stand a king from Paras. There will stand a king from Iran. Paras is Iran. And he will threaten the world. He will threaten world stability. And the nations of the world will be trembling. Israel will be shaking. What will be? What will be? What will be? And it says in the Medrash that God will tell them, Bonai, my children, al tisyaru, do not fear, because everything I've done for you. And then Mashiach will stand on the roof of the temple and he will say, Anovim, humble ones, the time of your redemption has arrived. That's the Medrash. And then there's one more line which I never understood until now properly. The line says like this: Ve'im ein atem ma'aminim. If you do not believe me, that means, if you don't believe me that this year Mashiach is coming because there's so much evil in the world, because there's so much pain in the world, because there's so much suffering in the world, there's so much depravity in the world, that you don't believe me that Mashiach is coming, you don't believe me there could be purity and goodness in the world. Look at the light shining upon you. This is the Medrash. Astounding Medrash if you think about it. If you don't believe me that things are going to be good, look at the light shining inside of you. What does that mean? It's a very, very powerful line. That means you look now, it's October 2024, and you see monsters in the world. You see so much evil, so much darkness in the world. And you think to yourself, how could it be that the culmination of creation is happening right now in front of my eyes? How could it be the Mashiach is coming now? How could it be that there's goodness in the world? Says God, look deeper. Look into your soul. Look at the light shining upon you. Meaning like this. Take a lady like Rachel Goldberg Pollen, the mother of Hirsch. The mother of Hirsch, who we know now, Sinwar Yimach Shemoy, may God avenge his blood, and may God obliterate him, who was with them in the tunnel, and they were murdered. Listen to her words at her son's funeral. She's standing over the body of her child, and she's saying, these are her words, thank you Hashem. Thank you, God, for giving me the honor and privilege of being your mother for 23 years. I wish it was longer. Which pen can describe the depths of her neshama, of her soul, standing in front of her child, thanking Hashem for being a mother, and she's telling, my sweet, 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 sweet boy, go on your journey. Who can describe that power in her words, that light? This is what the Medrash tells us. If you don't believe me, look at the light shining from this courageous, fierce mother. Incredible. Look at the light shining from Sapir Cohen, who was a hostage held for 55 days, kidnapped from Nir Oz, one of the worst places, kidnapped by Hamas, held in captivity. She wasn't given food and water properly. She told her Hamas captors one time, when they didn't want to give her bread, what's written in the Quran? Because they wanted her to convert. What's written in the Quran about captives, about hostages? The Hamas captor, tormentor, said, you have to feed them. She said, well, I'm not converting because you're not feeding me. So you gave her a pita. She argued with them. She calmed them down. And then 2 days before she was released, she noticed that one of the Hamas tormentors lit a candle, a memorial candle, and wrote her name, Sapir, on it. So thinking he's about to kill her, she asked him, what is this? Why are you writing my name on it? So he said to her, you are my enemy and I hate you. But when you are around, there's light. Think of the words of the Medrash again. If you don't believe me, look at the light shining from people like Sapir. You know, for years, and I heard this myself with our Belev Echad work, for years we used to accuse the younger generation of soldiers of being lazy, of being, iPhones and iPads and all about them, of being selfish and not thinking of anybody else. And look at the lions that arose from our youngsters. Look how Am Yisrael rose like a lion, like Bilam says, Kararavatz Ka'ari, we are like a crouching lion. Make no mistake, when you see a Jew, they are just lying down, but awaken them, and October 7 has awoken us. We are like that roaring lion. So there was a commander, Oded Harush, who went into a house in Khan Yunis with his team. And they were worried that the house was booby-trapped. So one of the young soldiers, a 19-year-old, told his commander, Oded, he said, let me go in first, because you have 4 children at home. So if it's booby-trapped, let me die. And the commander told him, no, I have lived my life. You haven't. I will go in first. Think of these conversations. And think about that light shining in Am Yisrael, that incredible light. If you don't believe me, says the Medrash, look at this light. We're so pure, we are so strong. Think about that why that we have gained, that light that has arisen in every single one of us. It's been the worst year for our people in our lifetime. Certainly the worst year since the Holocaust. And it's brought about the absolute best in every single one of us, not just in Israel, but in every single one of us sitting here in this room. There was a wedding that was supposed to happen about 3 weeks ago of Osher Sopkin together with his wife Victoria. And on the wedding day, Osher was called on a Tzav Shmone. Tzav Shmone means you have to go straight away to the reserves. He went to the Lebanon border as Israel was going into Lebanon. And Victoria, thinking that her husband will be much happier and much stronger and will have much more spiritual strength if she marries him, she went to the border and she married him on the border, without her wedding dress, without her dream hall and her friends and her dream as a young girl growing up, imagining her wedding day. She gave all that up so that she can marry her husband on the border, so that he can go into Lebanon strengthened. That is the light of Am Yisrael. That is the light of our nation. That is the light of our people. That is our light. And that's also how we look at ourselves. You look at your friends around you and you see a grumpy Jew, and you see somebody who sleeps in, who's so selfish, When I ask them for a favor, they don't really want to do it. You know, we all have friends like that, right? I ask them for a favor, I ask them to come for Shabbat dinner, they don't want to. I ask them to host, they don't want to do a favor, they only want to take, right? Says the Medrash, you don't know how to look at your friend. Because if you look deeper, if you probe deeper inside of them, you'll see their soul, you'll see the neshama, you'll see such purity. You'll see an angel. You just haven't been able to see that light. Says the Medrash, if you don't believe me, look at that light. You just need to search deeper for that light. There was once, in the 1940s in Germany, there was a Jew by the name of Mottel. Mottel was the town sinner. He would always sin. Any sin, this guy would do. He wouldn't come to shul, he wouldn't fast on Yom Kippur, certainly you wouldn't catch him in a sukkah because that's a mitzvah. He wouldn't do anything. It's like he lived separate lives to the Jewish community. And then the Nazis came. And suddenly he was thrust into being part of the community because the Nazis didn't care if you were observant or you weren't observant. And at one point the Nazis asked all the Jews of that town to line up. And they spread the Sifrei Torah on the floor. And they asked the Jews to stand and trample on the Torahs for their delight. And this guy, Mottel, the sinner, who had never kept any part of the Torah in his life, went in front of the line and he asked to be first. And when the German Nazi told him go, he looked the Nazi in the eyes and he told him, us Jews, we do not trample on the Torah. The Nazi took a gun and shot him in the head and he died. How is it possible that this guy Mottel, who never kept the Torah in his lifetime, but became such a holy Jew, willing to die for the Torah? This is what the Medrash means. Look deeper into the soul of a Jew. Every single one of us are like that. You see a friend who's selfish. You see a friend who's not nice to you. You see a friend who does sins. Look deeper. Look deeper into their souls, into their eyes. Ariel Sharon, the great mighty general Ariel Sharon, who founded Unit 101, which became incorporated into Tzahal today. Ariel Sharon has basically founded Tzahal, just FYI. Right, in the 1950s, where we had terrorist attacks and nobody knew what to do, Ariel Sharon went and picked 4 soldiers. Meir Hartzion, he called him Israel's finest soldier. And every time there was a terrorist attack coming from a certain town, Sharon would go with Unit 101 and he would decimate the entire town. The town wouldn't exist. And eventually he took that spirit and incorporated it into the whole Tzahal. Ariel Sharon, who saved the day in 1967 and 73. So he was found when Israel got the Western Wall. Sharon went to the Western Wall. And there was a Chabadnik there, approached him and offered him to put on tefillin. And Sharon, the mighty general, put on tefillin. And when he did that and he said the Shema Yisrael in front of the Kotel, he started to cry. And when he was asked by the press, by the media, Sharon, you crying? What? You're not religious. Atalo Dati, you're not religious. Why are you crying? He was like the quintessential Sabra, this tough Israeli. So Sharon says, yes, it's true. I'm not a Yehudi Dati. I'm not a religious Jew. But deep down, I have a Yehudi Dati. Somewhere buried inside of me, I have a Yehudi Dati, a religious Jew. See, I came to the wall. I have deep feelings. I put on tefillin. And then I realized the Yehudi Dati, the religious Jew inside of me, doesn't have any words. All he knows how to do is to cry. So my deep Jew inside of me put on tefillin and started to cry. That is what all of us need to awaken. If you want to know the lesson of October 7 of Simchat Torah for us more than anything else, it's to awaken that Yehudi Dati inside of us. It's to look and to realize that deep inside of our souls, we are good people. Don't let your Yetzer Hara convince you you're a bad person. By the way, the evil inclination is an expert at this. He tells you, he convinces you, you are a bad Jewess, you were a bad Jew. Well, you didn't keep kosher yesterday. Why are you doing it today? You spoke evil, you spoke gossip, you don't pray enough, you're a bad person. How dare you come to the synagogue? The Yetzer Hara is expert at that. And we need to tell our evil inclination, no, we're good people inside of us. We have a neshama, we have a soul, which is a part of God. Not just us, but the fellow Jew next to me. And that is why the greatest thing you could do is to love a fellow Jew. To love your brother, to love your sister. When somebody asks you to do a favor, the greatest thing you could do is do a favor for them. What's the greatest thing you could do for a father? Is to get along with the siblings. What's the greatest thing you could do for God? To get along with His children, to get along one with the other. You know, there was this, you all know the story, but there was a lady by the name of Rachel. On October 7, when Hamas broke into her house, she was an elderly lady and she realized, you know, these bloodthirsty terrorists are here to kill her. And I guess she was an elderly lady, so they said, you know, we could take our time killing her. And she said to herself, you know, a hungry terrorist is much more dangerous than a well-fed terrorist. So she made them cookies. She cooked for them. She made them these delicious cookies, and the terrorists ate them one after the other after the other. And she made them coffee. She spoke to them. She even bandaged one of the terrorists' hands that was injured from an IDF soldier. The terrorists, for 15 hours, ate her cookies, farbrained with her, spoke to her. They asked her about her children. She told them, my children hate Israel. They don't even live here. And at the end of the 15 hours, her children, which were actually police officers, came in, killed the terrorist, and saved her life. When she shared the story on Israeli television, everybody wanted to know what? What's the recipe for those cookies? True story. You know, Gali Segal and Ben Benjamin, they were bride and groom in the Nova Festival on October 7. And they were both hiding in the migunit, in the shelter. And I think that shelter was the one where there was a guy, a Ner, Hamas kept on throwing a grenade in and he threw it out. They threw 7 grenades and on the 8th one he was killed. But eventually Hamas threw grenades in that and a lot of people were killed there. And Ben and Gali were both injured. They didn't know if each other were alive, and they saw each other in Soroka Hospital. Ben was pretty badly injured. And it turns out that they both had the exact same injury. What was that? Both missing their right leg. And when they got married, this was one of the most emotional weddings this past year. This guy Ben and his wife Gali, both of them could understand each other's pain. And they told the Chabad rabbis who were there that they feel like they both came out of the Holocaust. They both came out of this trauma with the exact same injury. And we will continue, we will persevere, we will live our lives, we will have children, we will show Hamas they didn't win. Listen to the words of the Medrash. If you don't believe me that this is the year that Mashiach is coming, look at the light shining from these great people, Ben and Gali, who are determined to continue to persevere despite the odds and despite what happened. So lesson number 1 of today's class was, anybody remember? How could Israel have failed so miserably on October 7? Lesson number 2, why do they hate us? Lesson number 3, why is this time period the greatest time period, the greatest light and the greatest time that Mashiach will come? Lesson number 4, if I think of 3 words that can describe this past year, Simchat Torah to Simchat Torah, right? This Shmini Atzeret, this Thursday morning is the Yortzeit. Rabbi Doron, by the way, who's a rabbi from South Africa, his son was murdered. They didn't know what happened to him for many, many months. His son was murdered. A wonderful man from South Africa. I know this family from South Africa. He just gave out a message this week and he said, how can I dance in Simchat Torah? And he said, as Jews, I'm going to dance and I'm going to cry. I'm going to mourn and I'm going to be happy. I'm going to say Yizkor and I'm going to dance Hakafot. Because that is the message of Am Yisrael. But if I think of 3 words that can capture everything that happened during the last year, what would that be? Am Yisrael Chai. You know who founded the song Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai? Does anyone know? Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Now we all know who founded it. Jews have been singing that song for about 65 years. In 1965, Jake Birnbaum, who was then the founder of the student struggle for Soviet Jewry, asked Shlomo Kalbach to found a song for that protest that they made across the UN for Russian Jewry. And Shlomo Kalbach founded the song Am Yisrael Chai, Am. In fact, the most famous song is a song by the Am Yisrael Chai song. How does it go? How does it go, Sherry? The Am Yisrael Chai song? Yeah. Okay. The Am Yisrael Chai song. So there's a song, we sing it. There's even a dance to Am Yisrael Chai. But tonight, in the conclusion of tonight's shir, I want every single one of us to feel Am Yisrael Chai. Don't sing it. Don't dance it, because we're going to dance and sing it on Simchat Torah. But on this Simchat Torah, I want you to feel in your bones, in every fiber of your being, I want you to feel that Am Yisrael Chai. But Shlomo Kalbach added to that song, right? Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. And then it goes, Od Avinu Chai. Who's Od Avinu Chai? Od Avinu Chai, our father is still alive. It's taken from the words in the Bible when Joseph asked his brothers, is my father still alive? And they said yes. It's taken from those words. And Shlomo Kalbach added to the song, Od Avinu Chai, our father in heaven is still alive. Because when our father in heaven is alive, it means we are alive. You know, there was a Yagil Yaakov, was a 12-year-old child taken to captivity together with his brother and his father. And he was released after 55 days. His father was unfortunately murdered in captivity. And he came out and he said, I want to wear a yarmulke and tzitzit. And his friends asked him, yarmulke, tzitzit, why, what? And he said, I felt that Hashem was there every single step of the way protecting me. And that is why I'm alive. I have no idea why he allowed me to be captured in the first place. But in captivity, the only thing that helped me stay alive was the belief and the idea that I felt that God was with me every aspect of the way. Am Yisrael Chai. You know why Am Yisrael Chai? Because Od Avinu Chai. You know, there was a 72-year-old hostage. Her name is Adina. And when Hamas came to release her, she asked her Hamas captors, please don't release me. Take this other lady who was with her in captivity instead of me, an older lady, a more frail lady. 72-year-old Adina, think about that, asked Hamas, please don't release me, release that other lady who's with me in captivity. What kind of lady is that? What kind of person is that? That's a person who believes in Am Yisrael Chai. Hamas didn't accept her offer. They said, only you are leaving, not that other person. When we see soldier after soldier after soldier dancing before they go into Gaza, dancing in Lebanon, dancing by the Western Wall, we know, we sing, we dance, and we feel that Am Yisrael is Chai. Right, you all saw the bar mitzvah of this amazing hedge fund guy, Bill Ackman. Did anybody see his bar mitzvah? There's a Chabad, little Chabad student went into his office and asked him to put on tefillin. And he put on tefillin and he took a picture of it and he said, Shema Yisrael, and that was his bar mitzvah. Jews are inspired. Jews are alive. Jews are coming out and having bar mitzvahs because the Am Yisrael is Chai, is alive. October 7, Simchat Torah, was a wake-up call for every single one of us. And if we haven't woken up yet, wake up now. Because this is the yahrzeit, this is the anniversary. On Simchat Torah this year, we need to dance. We need to dance like never before. Simchat Torah is so personal for my wife and I, who have this friend who was murdered at the Nova Festival, Raz Mizrahi, who was a wounded soldier and part of our team. On Nova Festival, she was brutally murdered, gunned down by Hamas after surviving a terrorist attack. And the greatest thing we can do for her and for everybody who was murdered is to dance and to rejoice and to feel that Am Yisrael is Chai, to take upon ourselves a commitment. If you don't put on tefillin every day, do it now. If you don't have a mezuzah on all your doors, do it now. If you don't light Shabbat candles on time, do it now. Because when you are holding that Shabbat candle and you light it, and you take a minute of your time, you're holding a weapon more powerful than a nuclear bomb. That Shabbat candle reverberates throughout the universe and does good for Am Yisrael. If I daven every day, then Am Yisrael is Chai. If I study Torah every day, Am Yisrael is Chai. If I keep kosher, Am Yisrael is Chai. On this Simchat Torah, make that commitment that Am Yisrael should be Chai and alive inside of yourself. On October 7, there was a soldier by the name of Yair Einsbacher. He fought in Nir Oz, and he said, Nir Oz is this most beautiful, magnificent place, unbelievable. And we never knew where the terrorists are coming out of. And he eliminated all the terrorists in that city. His unit took heavy losses. A lot of people were wounded, but he came out alive. And towards the end of the day, they were in this house, and they realized that Jews were sheltering in the bomb shelter. And he asked them to come out, and they thought he was a terrorist. And so he started saying, Modeh ani lefanecha, and Torah tziva lanu Moshe meroshach Hilat Yaakov, and today is Simchat Torah. And then he said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And finally, they were convinced that he's Jewish, and they let him out, and they came out. And he said afterwards on television, he said, what I wanted to do in that moment, and what I did in that moment, is to hug every single one of those Jews. And what I want to do now, he says, is to go to every single Jew, no matter who, no matter what, no matter how, and hug them. I don't care if it's a Trump Jew, I don't care if it's a Harris Jew, I don't care if it's a Bibi Jew, I don't care if it's a Lapid Jew, I don't care what kind of Jew it is. I want to hug every single Jew, because Am Yisrael is Chai inside every single one of us, because October 7 awoken us. It awakened the lion inside of us, the light that's shining inside of us. That is why I want to hug every single Jew. They killed us. What we do is we hug each other. There was another guy, Yaron, on October 7, was hiding with his wife. And he was literally, he had a gun on him, and Hamas terrorists were trying to get into that bomb shelter. And he was able to kill one and another and another, and finally he couldn't kill anybody else. And Hamas started burning the whole house down. And when his wife felt that they couldn't breathe anymore, she said, it's better to fall into their hands and die of smoke here. So she said, let's go out. So he said, fine. So he went out himself. He said, let me see what's going on outside. And he looked at the window, he opened the window, and as soon as he opened the window, he sees red lasers all over him. Because the IDF had already come, and they thought he was a terrorist. And he realized they're about to shoot him, and he put his hand on his right, like that, and he said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and they realized that he's Jewish, and they let him live. Because that Shema Yisrael is the cry of our neshama, it's a cry of our soul. And I want to finish off with one story, final story for the night. And that is a story of a soldier who I've shared details of him before. I'm going to call the soldier Moishele because his name cannot be revealed. Moishele served in an elite unit. The name of the unit I also cannot identify. Moishele on October 7 was ambushed by terrorists in Kfar Aza. And a friend of his was shot right away and he fell to the ground. And Moishele went out, wanted to save him, and he was shot as well in the back. And the bullets that Hamas use are designed to inflict maximum damage. The bullet exploded inside of him. Hundreds of pieces of shrapnel all over him. And he felt his strength ebbing away. felt he's dying, so he lays on the floor and he says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and he passes out. Half an hour later, he woke up and he realizes that he's in a blind spot. Hamas are there, the IDF are there, they're shooting at each other. And he wanted to signal to the IDF that he's alive, so he picks up his head, and as he does that, a Hamas sniper shoots him in the skull, grazes his head. And then he wants to still signal to the IDF that he's alive, picks up his hand, and he was shot in the finger, which had to be amputated, and shot in the hand. Miraculously, he survived, was taken to ICU, many months in a coma, and very, very, pretty bad. He woke up. We brought him to New York to be treated here at NYU. The doctor told me, he described his pain. He basically has pieces of shrapnel, hundreds of pieces of shrapnel on his back, which cannot be removed. You cannot do an MRI because it may kill him. And he basically has this injury that it's like, imagine being electrocuted over and over again, every second of the day, over and over and over again. He cannot sit straight. He has to lie down all the time because of the severe pain. So this guy Moshe told the story. He says, when I was injured and in the hospital, I was in so much pain. I was so miserable. I couldn't do anything. And he says, you know what awakened me? You know what awoken me? You know what enabled me to live? Was one day when I decided, lying in the hospital ward, to go pay a visit to my fellow wounded soldiers. I went in my wheelchair and I paid a Bikur Cholim visit to my friends, and I spoke to them and I cheered them up and I listened to them. But you know, when I listened to them, it made me realize that I'm useful and productive, and it changed my life. It made me be able to withstand my pain. It gave me the power to live again. It gave me the power to get better. Helping another Jew helped me in the greatest way. And I thought this is one of the greatest lessons we all have, and one of the greatest lessons to finish this shiur. Because the greatest lesson from October 7, remember I started the class tonight and I said we had lost our why. The story of Moshe indicates that we have regained our why. We have regained our purpose, our mission to help one another, to be there for one another. We have regained our light. Re'u oira, if you don't believe me, look at the light shining inside of you and realize that we are living in the best of times, in miraculous times. Realize that you know why they hate us? You know why they hate us so much? Because we were chosen to be a light unto the nations. We were chosen to lead the way. Because Am Yisrael is Chai, Am Yisrael is alive. This Simchat Torah, let us dance, let us rejoice, let us party like nothing else, because that is what Hashem wants from us more than anything else. Thank you all for coming.